Why is art good for the soul?
Yeah, I believe art is good for the soul in more ways than we could think to count. But if I were to try to count some of the ways, certainly the realms of art therapy, healing, mental health, physical health, I believe it contributes to all those things. But um, in my many hospital stays and my many medical adventures, what I would always bring art into the hospital rooms, and working on art or having other pieces in the room. And one of the many doctors said to me, what we do as physicians is keeping people alive, but like what you're doing is like a reason to be alive. And I thought, yeah, that's that's a good way to phrase it. So it is speaking to the physical. It's speaking to the sort of temporary natures of things, the momentary, but it's speaking beyond that, and it's investigating, asking questions beyond that. And so physical and metaphysical, soul, spirit, body, mind, heart. It's the whole shebang bang. I'm really into art as a way to dive into the just breadth of what it could mean to be human.
I think art is definitely good for the soul. For me specifically, it was a way to both keep my imagination active and keep conversations going that I thought were important to my life with other people, making an expressive drawing how I was feeling. Because, like you can tell somebody you're in pain or tell somebody that it's hard to breathe, but can they really understand that and empathize with that? I think that's a really important question. Language can only do so much, right? So I think art offers a whole nother level of connecting with people. And to me, connecting with people is ultimately what is best for my soul. And I think I do that through art and seeing other people's expressions through art also helps me relate to them. And it's just a whole nother language where I think you can create aesthetic relationships and concepts that are more multi-layered than just verbal language, which I think fails to capture a lot of uh, aspects of living with a chronic illness or having CF or being hospitalized and getting a transplant, like all these really really heavy topics. Sometimes when you talk about them verbally, people can zone out, space out. They don't want to fully grasp exactly what you're talking about. So I think art really captures that. Hi, my name's Dominic Quagliozzi. I'm a visual artist.
Hi, I'm Dylan Mortimer. I am an artist that was born with cystic fibrosis, and I make artwork about the lived experience. I would love to have you come look at my journey at DNJ Gallery, along with 17 other artists from around the world who create artwork of their lived experience with cystic fibrosis, and create work contending with that. We would love to see you anytime up to June 22nd. Our closing is on June 22nd from 12 to 4. Would love to see you at this exhibition. And if you'd like to learn more, please listen to this conversation.
Why should or must the SoCal community attend the art exhibit Breathtaking?
Yes, the SoCal community should attend the exhibit Breathtaking to see a one-of-a-kind exhibition of artists from around the world, as a testimony to overcoming a rare disease that is having impact on other diseases as well. Uh, Speaking specifically to a moment of within a lifetime going from average lifespan being 14 to 20 to being 50 to 60. So it's a testament to hope. It's a testament to courage. It's a testament to um, possibility and creation, it's a creation out of nothing kind of thing. You know, our lives were forecasted and meant to be nothing, and they're not only not nothing, they're not, it's not only survival, but it's thriving in every sense of the world. And you know what, in my mind, I think kind of what is more privileged than creating artwork? You know what I mean? Like to go from just sort of a lack to fullness, and fullness, the degree to which creating, um, both in response to the difficulties and in the joy of still being alive and having come so far, and for so many doing better than ever before. It's also a testament for those struggling, and you know, speaking to the hope that has yet to be realized. So all those kind of things are happening in one space. Is well worth the visit.
Yeah, I think this SoCal community, the Southern California community should definitely see this breathtaking, because it offers a look into a disease that has had so many advancements in terms of research, fundraising, community, and I think it's an amazing case study in what it can be, what community can look like through all of those facets, to help people as a project in caretaking on multiple levels, to nearly eradicate a disease, overcome almost insurmountable odds, right? To From when I was born in 1982, where CF, I was given, maybe 10, 15 years of life expectancy, and the treatment was, just throw some antibiotics at him and let him hack his brains out, to now you have medications that you can take that, while you're taking the medication, regulate your cells so they work in function like they're supposed to. And kids that are being born now might not have any long-term debility or disability with cystic fibrosis. It's much more manageable, and I think that's a really unique situation to cystic fibrosis. And I think if you come to breathtaking, get that you get that sense, you can feel that, and that can impact your life in other ways. So I think it's a very important show to see.
When did you first hear about the proposed art exhibit, Breathtaking, a group show of artists with cystic fibrosis, and why did you have to be part of this unique exhibit?
So I had an idea for an exhibition, and we had talked about it with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation chapters of Los Angeles and Orange County, which are now just one Southern California chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. But it was a difficult, finding a space became a key issue. They found some spaces to do something like this in, but the spaces were more for like a gala or a fundraiser or something like that. There weren't walls really, to the spaces that they were finding. So it wasn't going to work as an art exhibition. And then my friend Ted, who works at USC, he's a curator at USC, and curates art, art shows around health and medicine. Put me in touch with Pam, who is the owner of DNGA Gallery, the gallery had been closed for a few years since COVID, and she wanted to reopen with a series of shows related to different health issues, and wanted the first one to be around cystic fibrosis. So it became this perfect, collision of events, that the gallery space was available. There was the backing of the foundation to do the show, and they helped support some of the transportation of artists, from the US and abroad. And so then it was just a matter of putting the show together and selecting artists. We put a call out, and, knew of 10 or so artists already, put a call out for extra artists, got 18 artists in the show total, and filled up the gallery with all that work. So that was kind of the path.
Tell us about your art pieces in the new art exhibit, Breathtaking.
Yeah, I have two works in breathtaking. I have donor recipient, which is a fabric work from 2023. And that is kind of just visually describing it. It's a wall hanging made out of sewn hospital gowns. One of them is painted and then drawn on with graphite. So it's painted red and then with a lot of mark making graphite. And then it's sewn and cut to look like a torso. And then the lung area, I basically cut out and then filled that in with two deflated balloons that just hang there. And then it's framed by sewing hospital gowns around the torso. So it's kind of like a hanging rectangle with a floating red torso and two balloons where the lungs are. That was a work that I was thinking about my experience with transplantation and the kind of anonymity of my donor and the breathlessness of being having lung failure and chronic lung failure and then acute lung failure later as I approached actually getting my transplant. And like this ability to blow up a balloon and balloons kind of signifying like especially a blue balloon, we as a American society, celebrate the birth of a boy with a blue balloon, or a birthday you have balloons. And so like the celebratory nature of what a balloon can signify, but also they're hung upside down and shriveled and deflated, so it's like this almost like letting the air out of this celebration. And that's kind of my experience with transplantation. There was a lot of pomp and circumstance. There was a lot of high energy emotional content with my transplant. I was the subject of a lot of like, hey, we're thinking about you, we're sending prayers, we're sending love, we're wishing and hoping and praying you get your new lungs. So I was the object of a lot of attention from for almost 3 years, for over 3 years. That's how long I was on the waiting list for transplant. People I went to school with, like when I was 5 years old, found me on Facebook and was like, I heard you're dying and you need new lungs, right? Like, so all these people I ever met in my life were like reaching out. So it was like this really high vibration of attention and care. And but it was always like this dark underside of that. Like, am I going to survive this? Is my life like some kind of inspiration for other people? Like this kind of story about what trying to get a life-saving transplant is. And so that kind of deflation of the lung of the balloons and stuff kind of talked towards that. And then again, like the hospital gowns, the anonymity of patient after patient wearing those in the hospital. And so like the construction of this work using the gowns and the torso being both me embodied as a recipient and the lungs coming from an anonymous person's torso. So it's like, and then the patchwork of sewing them all together, kind of quilt like, recycled material, and reuse and recycle the hospital gowns, the painting scraps and stuff like that. So it was kind of like a culmination of that experience. And then the other piece is called 65 Roses, a nod to like the charitable story of that the boy who hears his mom talking on the phone with his doctor, and he says, I heard you said I have 65 roses. What does that mean? And she said, no, you have cystic fibrosis. Like that kind of, is that a real story? Is that CF folklore? Like I really love that. Like I feel like it is a real story that, there's source material out there that can confirm that. But to me, it's always been part folklore, right? So when we had the opportunity to do this show of cystic fibrosis artists, I wanted to make a new work for that. So I made the 65 Roses, which is literally 65 roses in a vase, and the vase is made out of moving blankets, and the roses are made by coloring hospital gowns with red uh, red colored pencils, and then I rolled them and folded them into roses and then sewed them on, so it's like a big bouquet of 65 roses. And then the moving blanket comes in, it's kind of another material, textile fabric that kind of talks about these transitional states of high emotional labor and physical labor, where you're going to move, right? So you have all these memories from the past, and you have this intense physical labor in the moment. You may call on friends to help you move. You may call a moving company. And then the anxiety and also hope of the future. You're going to move somewhere, and there's excitement, but also that kind of bittersweetness of leaving the past and present into the unknown of the future. So to me, the moving blanket represents all of those things, as does the hospital gowns, right? And so tying those together, it's like this experience of cystic fibrosis, this like living through transition and turmoil and on and off debility and disability and labor and struggle and things like that, and reliance on your community, your family, your caretakers, the interdependence of that, but also that hope for independence and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's kind of what those two works represent.
So as you come in the space of the gallery, the first piece is why doesn't the bush burn up? And is a tree, bronchial tree formation that some people read visually as bronchial branches. I mean, it looks like a tree or tree branches, but it could be veins or arteries. It could be, different systems of the body. And then kind of composed of different circles. It's basically circles of glitter with paint, kind of squeeze bottle application surrounding all these circles of glitter to create this effect. So the circles kind of loosely represent the idea of cells. So again, this collision of bronchial tree and cells. Again, these two things that have I've looked at visually in so many different ways, and it is either not gone well or gone really well post transplant. And look, the scans look good, the numbers look good. Oh, they don't look good again. They everything's going bad again too. Everything is looking good again. Everything is going well. So, back to the spiritual references, kind of referencing the burning bush of Moses in the wilderness. Why doesn't that why isn't it burning up? There's all forecasted throughout my life was that I would have the average lifespan of CF was 14 years when I was born, and I'm 44 now. So to the question of why doesn't the bush burn up? Like how do I keep surviving? How is it that I'm alive despite all this fire, around me? So that's that piece. The next piece over is we can only receive what we have been given, and is a fusion. This is kind of what I've been doing a lot since we recently moved to California about 2 years ago, creating these paintings that are a fusion of medical equipment. So in this piece, it's dangling cords and medical wires and IV bags and IV poles kind of in the background, overlapped by flora and fauna, exotic plant life, that I see more in the Southern California area, and also just thinking of like a tropical paradise, and again, smashing those two realities together. So one of the earlier versions of that, I did like these surgery scenes in this like jungle of lush exotic plant life. And so again, speaking to the feeling of that fine line of like, these are traumatic, terrible events, and yet they're in this sort of paradise, in this joy, and so both of those are happening simultaneously. The third piece in the gallery is self-portrait with an IV pole, which is like a portrait of me in a hospital gown with my face kind of completely covered by bags from the IV pole that I'm holding. Which and there is some of that plant life that I just spoke of mixed in with that as well, with that piece. But that piece, in its essence, is kind of about a portrait of myself rendered by the literal overwhelming of medicine and carrying the weight of all these IV bags, all this medication, such to the degree that you cannot see my face behind it. And so as I've mentioned earlier, about speaking to the beauty of like how all this equipment has helped and saved me, how it has also simultaneously felt overwhelming and crushing, that it's overtaken me almost, and yet I live on. So that's a piece, and then two smaller pieces. One is a tree trunk, which is really kind of thinking about my donor and my bronchial tree both through the process of transplant. Both transplants are cut at the trunk of the tree to replace the bronchial tree. And so for a time, at least, my donor's bronchial tree and mine cut the sort of branch of the the trunk of the bronchial tree remaining. And so that piece is kind of thinking about that. It's called the taking tree. And so it really kind of has to deal with the weight of kind of survivor's guilt and, the unfairness of how is it that I'm alive, but my donor is not. And the weight, just kind of the weight of that. And then another piece is a Air Jordan Nike sneaker that is a symbol I will use often because there's air inside the shoes, akin to air being inside the lungs, and the shoes sort of have a shape similar to lungs itself. And so all these parallels, as anyone would look at a shoe like that for athletics or fashion, I'm adding the component of air that is in the shoes as a life source. So looking to that symbol of that shoe, like coveting those shoes like you would for athletics or fashion. Here I'm coveting like literal breath and life. And so that's what those symbols are about. So that's what's in the show.
Yeah, some of the themes I see in the show are definitely hope. I think that's a big one. And especially anytime you're in a show with Dylan, that hope will be involved, right? He's really big on that. Just I know like sick and disabled people hate being inspirational, but for me, Dylan's inspirational. So I don't mean any offense to that by that, but yeah. So I think hope is definitely a big one, but I think the resourcefulness and this drive to be communal through isolation, which kind of doesn't seem like it makes sense, but I think if you walk through the show, you get that sense, like this the human spirit of wanting to be in community and the human spirit as a social being, both through art making, which is essentially a social act, right? You're making something to show someone else, but also the drive, the interdependent drive of CF patients and their caretakers and the medical communities. I think that's a powerful thing within the CF community, very specifically, that we are a group that rallies around each other and does a lot of fundraising, does a lot of research, does a lot of outreach. It's very impactful, I think, over the last 30 years of what the CF Foundation has done and what each individual chapter. When I was growing up, my mom was the sponsor and the organizer of our local Great Strides walk. So we would do a 5K walk around my local town to raise money for CF. This is in like the 80s and early 90s, mid 90s. And all these things throughout the whole country accumulated over the last 20, 30 years. And now are bringing the CF modulators, Trikafta and those kind of things because of that communal spirit and that sense of caretaking as a community. So I think that also comes across in the show really strongly. Something very specific to, I think, to the show and the CF community.
So being at the actual gallery of the breathtaking art exhibit, just tell me your thoughts and perspective when you finally saw it all put together.
Yeah, when I saw the work all in the gallery together, it was a really amazing moment because for 3 or 4 months, Dylan and I we were having Zoom conversations. We were talking about what we could do in the space, what the space. I'm right currently near Boston, and Dylan is in LA, so he was able to see the space in person, and so I was only seeing blueprints of the gallery and photos of the gallery. We did a little video walkthrough, but you can never really kind of judge the spatial feel of something unless you're there in the space. So, and then chatting with the other artists over Instagram or Zoom, we did a few meetings with Sarah Cross, who helped organize the exhibit as well, and with Ted Meyer and Pam Schoenberg, the gallery owner. So we were having a lot of these Zoom meetings, but you can never really necessarily know or tell how the show is going to come out. So I got there on day 2 of the install, and most of the work was already up, and we were kind of cleaning up the walls and putting up the labels, and so yeah, just seeing it from there come together, it was like I was like, whoa, like this is amazing. It really came out amazing. I feel like I'm using amazing a lot, but I feel yeah, it was great. So overwhelming too. Like this sense of pride um, that we made this happen, and all these other artists were um, willing to trust us with their work and trust our judgment and to represent them. We wanted to really make sure we respected and represented their work strongly, and could give them something they could be proud of, and also the made me a little emotion. It made me emotional too about the sense of community that we brought together, and the shared experience of all our individual experiences, which a lot of times includes heavy levels of isolation. Um, we could bring that all together and be in community with each other, and um, inform each other too. Like my work contextualize Dylan's work and Bob Flanagan's work, and Rowan with some amazing photographs of her with her wheelchair and oxygen tanks, and um, yeah, and just being all in conversation with each other in the same gallery space was really impressive, and um, more emotional than I expected it to be for myself.
My experience was just a lot of joy. I mean, really from the vantage point of putting the show together, there's 3 spaces in the gallery, 3 rooms, and I thought we could probably get enough to fill 1 room, but we easily filled all 3 and had to, not include every piece that was submitted. And so that was really encouraging and really joyful to see the amount of work, the quality of the work. So many of these artists have been to art school, and just, are young or haven't really exhibited much. And so opportunity and seeing everyone's reaction within that has been amazing. So that's amazing. As far as themes within, um, there's such a variety. There are a few that pull in some literal, even literal materials from hospital and the vernacular of medication or IV bags and such. There's some of that. There's some that work in a very figurative way, in a very, and then there's some that work in a very abstract way, and some, there's all kinds of media, sculpture, mixed media, fabric, painting, drawing, photography, video. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a range. So I think all of that was fantastic to see. And there is an emotional range for sure, from speaking to the anxiety, fear, mental health, death, decay, going down that road. Some like mine, kind of speaking to the hope, speaking to the overcoming, speaking to the victory, and then everything kind of in between. So a lot of beautiful themes for sure.
Yeah, I think Dylan and I both talked about this a lot. The we wanted the visitors, the viewers, to come into the show and just see the breadth of talent and creativity that each individual and as a collective, the cystic fibrosis artist community, they have, right? So we wanted everyone to kind of put work in the show that highlighted their own personal practices, that represented their own personal lived experience with CF. So I think we were really specifically focused on making sure the art represented the best in what each artist offered. So there's amazing video, documentary from Max McGuire, a filmmaker from Canada. Um, there's amazing illustrations from Eliza. She's from Spain, where she's like best friends with a mucus blob that takes on a personification and follows her everywhere on a mini bike, swimming, running through a field at school, right? And that's like very specific to her because she made the art, but also like a universal thing within CF, right? The experience of coughing up these phlegm balls, and you have a relationship with your own mucus, right? It's like you can tell how sick you are by the color of the mucus. Like, oh, like it's a dark green week, I got to call the doctor. Or if it's yellow, you're like, okay, I'm still good, right? So like I think each artist, even we did a historical reach back, and we included some work by Bob Flanagan, a poem and a photograph from his show, Visiting Hours at the New Museum, where he's in a wheelchair with Cherie Rose, and he's on oxygen. And it's like these personalized experiences from each artist, but there is some universal truths within the CF community in a lot of the work. So we thought that was really important to do that, and we picked work that was already existing from each person's practice.
Are there additional themes in your art pieces beyond dealing with cystic fibrosis?
Yeah, there are additional themes in what I'm creating too, than dealing with cystic fibrosis. I mean, all of that is present, but it's I hope for it not primarily to end with being about cystic fibrosis. I describe it as like I describe this a lot about transplant life, but I'd say all of CF too, that it often feels like the front row in the theater of reality. Like everybody's in the same theater, you know what I mean? Just sometimes situations of life kind of put you on the front row and everything's really loud and seems really, so when you are faced with a prognosis of an early death, or, everybody contends with mortality. It's just, from what place in the arena are you viewing the show? And so sometimes you're way up front and, everything's loud and you see everything real clear. And sometimes, you might feel way back and it's not as up close. So when I'm speaking to CF in my artwork, I'm really speaking about mortality and what do you do in light of that? What does life look like? What does hope look like? Specifically when there seems to be no reason to hope.
For my work, I think like I don't ever overly hope for the audience to get anything out of it, because if I do that, then I'm going to be chasing something that may be impossible through, but in terms of like the things I think about while I'm making the work is, can they relate to the object that I'm showing, right? So that's why I like take a lot of the hospital materials and I shape them into something. So over the years, I've gotten off of the square or rectangle format that a traditional painting is in. And I've started to shape the wall hangings. So they'll be like in the show, there's a torso and there's a bouquet of roses, right? So I think the entryway for me is always like a relatable object. And then so you see it from across the gallery and you're like, oh, that's like a interesting representation of bouquet of flowers. And as you get closer, as the viewer gets closer, the work starts to reveal darker truths, that it's made out of hospital gowns and moving blankets, and it's talking about some darker topics. And then you can start to examine the mark making and the coloring that I've done. You can see parts of the gowns or like the tags that you can kind of read, or you might even see some dust or dirt or something, because moving blankets have been on the ground, or there might be a little drop of blood on the gown that was left over from something. So you start to get closer and examine. And I think what I do as an artist who's had a lot of experimentation and a lot of experience with living with an invisible illness, people, to know that I have CF, you have to get to know me, and I reveal that over time. I do that with my artwork too. So you look at it from across the gallery, you see this object or the shape of something that you can kind of relate to, and as you get closer, it starts to reveal that it's some commentary on sickness or disease or the healthcare system or something, because of the use of medical materials and things like that. So there's that uncovering the invisibility of it, I think, is something that I want. And then the other thing is like using the gowns. Like there's a notion of like coincidence that can come up, where you might have a relationship with the actual gown itself. Some people have told me, like, I didn't know from across the room because it was colored, but as I got closer, I noticed it was a hospital gown, and I recognized it because my grandfather, he was sick or had open heart surgery or something, and he wore that gown, and so it's very prominent in my memory. And so there's some obscuring of that from a distance, but as you get closer, you get a more intimate experience, and you might have these coincidental moments that you can share with the work. And so that's kind of like a string or a thread that I hope that can come out at some point with individual viewers.
Tell us why this is such an important and unique art exhibit to go see in Southern California.
Yeah, so I know that there have been shows elsewhere in the world before that cystic fibrosis artists have been in, but in terms of a gallery in LA, I would not know of one. I know that there have been cystic fibrosis artists in shows, but all that to say, it's the first of its kind that I know of, to collect 18 artists who are CF fighters that create lived experience, work around their lived experience from around the world in this show. So to say that it's unique would be an understatement. I think it's a really good look globally at contending through a chronic illness like CF. And specifically at a moment where we have gone, in my lifetime, from average lifespan of 14 to average lifespan of late 50s. So people are starting to not only survive, but have to ask questions about significance and purpose, and, what will they do with their life now that they have it? And so this exhibition is kind of a testament to that, a testament to possibility in life. And of course, I would hope all of that be an inspiration to other rare disease communities and chronic illness sufferers, and also just people, like people in general who are in any way wrestling with hope and looking for possibility beyond what they could imagine in their minds.
Would you say in some interesting way it shows the full and many aspects of dealing with cystic fibrosis, just walking around the gallery?
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's a really good survey, I'd say, of what it can be like living with CF. Especially most of the artists are, which is interestingly enough, like I think Rowan's probably in her early 20s, but like 20s to 45, right? So that's like a 20-year period. And we're kind of like the last generation of CF people that are not, or that grew up without the modulators like Trikafta from Vertex, right? So that was an interesting overview of kind of what it's been like to grow up dealing with the struggles of CF and a body in revolt a lot, right? So you have a lot of the medical equipment in there. You have a lot of the mucus and dark humor, and um, there's it all looks really good too, which I think is really exciting. So you want to look at it. It's not anything that's like overly like, ooh, I can't look at that because it's too gross. So I think the artists, we all do a good job of making the work accessible from those point of view where you can kind of at least come into the work, and then the themes get a little darker from there, but at least, we're giving that kind of entryway. And I think as people with CF, we do that anyways, right? We kind of use the invisibility of CF to function in the world, and then we do all the nasty private stuff in private. And so I think the work reflects that element of living with CF really importantly as well too. And yeah, so I think it does show a lot of the aspects of that, and I think it's a very successful show in that way.
What do you think will surprise the art gallery visitor about the art exhibit Breathtaking?
I think the biggest surprise probably is the humor, like the dark humor that is involved in a lot of the work. I think there's a strong seriousness to a lot of the work, but a lot of it has dark humor in it too. And I think that's a really strong theme across a lot of the work. And the experimentation of all the work too, I think is interesting. There's a lot of different mediums. There's a lot of different use of materials, uh, different presentations of different topics, and yeah. So I think like for me specifically, I can speak from my own experience. A lot of my work is kind of funny and in dark ways, right? Like you wouldn't necessarily think that um, a bouquet of roses would, be made out of hospital gowns, and there the there's some green nitrile gloves that kind of drop down behind the flowers that are there, like the flowers leaves and stuff. But that's kind of a goofy way to make a bouquet of roses, right? And you make them out of these like really serious and heavy materials, and to me that's kind of funny. It's like you're revealing like these little inside jokes, and I think a lot of the other artists do similar things with that.
Yeah, I think even I think everybody, and including even the people that are in the CF community, know the CF community really well, will be surprised by the resolve and fight and, you know, stamina, energy, the will, like the human will to survive and the human will to thrive, and the human heart to, you know, in the face of such daunting odds, in the face of such difficult or really hard path. CF is it's a difficult diagnosis to carry, and so to see such beauty created in spite of that is, even I was surprised. I mean, it's like I've known all these artists. I've known most of the artists and seen some of the work before, but yeah, sort of surprised by joy to see all that come together in one space was really beautiful.
This gallery showing you are selling the art images, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So how can they only buy it if they're there? Can they buy it online? And the most important thing, if someone, more than one person, which I'm assuming will happen, wants to buy your piece of art, um, is it a bidding process or is it a commission process?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so all sales are, all the artwork is uniquely created. So once one person buys it, that's the, that's it. But they can buy things online. The in person would be a little easier, but all of it, whether online or in person, is really just a conversation with the individual artist. This is a unique case where the gallery is not taking any percentage of sales, which is never happens in the gallery world. But the gallery has been very gracious in that we are so when if somebody wants to buy a piece, they talk directly with the artist. So the gallery puts them in touch, if they're not already in touch with the artist, to work out the sale and pay the artist, by whatever means that works. We're suggesting a 30% donation back to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation of any work sold. So, that's just to help support the CF Foundation that made the show happen. So that's how it works.
Definitely want people to come and check out the gallery all the time during this event. But talk about the last day where a lot of the artists are coming back.
Well, yeah, a good day to check out the exhibition would be to come on the last day on June 22nd from 12 to 4, where we'll have a closing reception for the exhibition where some of the artists will be there. I mean, I know I will be there, and the last day of the show, and just to, a kind of fun time to see some of the artists, some of the in the show itself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dominic Quagliozzi, a visual artist from Massachusetts. I currently have work on display at DNJ Gallery in Los Angeles with a show called Breathtaking. It's 17 artists with cystic fibrosis, artists selected by myself and Dylan Mortimer. And we hope you come down, check out the show. You get a full experience of what living with cystic fibrosis is like. We have a lot of amazing artists in the show from all around the world, and you can see some beautiful art and talent on display. So I'll see you at the gallery.
So my name is Dylan Mortimer. I have, with 18 other artists, an exhibition at D&J Gallery in Santa Monica. That is one of the first exhibitions ever of all CF artists, 18 CF artists from around the world and around the country in this exhibition. Is Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month, and we would love to come celebrate with you, raise awareness with you. 30% of all sales of artwork go to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So we are encouraging everybody to come see the show, see the amazing show, see all these artists have done, and help support, help raise awareness for cystic fibrosis, but for hope itself, and all the research that is happening for this rare disease, and all the long way we have come in moving towards a cure of this disease to have impact not only for cystic fibrosis, but chronic illness itself, research and discovery itself, possibility and art making creation itself. Hope to see you at the gallery.